As communities expand and technologies improve, governments around the world are embarking on some of the most mind-blowing construction projects ever conceived. Whether it's to improve travel connections, improve the living conditions of citizens, or to further scientific research, there's one thing that's certain about these initiatives: they're incredibly expensive. It's time to put on your hard hats, because here are the top 15 most expensive construction megaprojects. Number 15. Honshu Shikoku Bridge, $75 billion. Japan is one of the best connected countries in the world, thanks in large part to its incredibly fast and efficient rail network. But as a place that's made up of a large number of islands, it's not possible to easily reach everywhere. During the 90s, there was a drive to connect the islands of Honshu and Shikoku, which are towards the south of the country, to maintain transport networks, which would in theory have a positive impact on the nation's economy and prepare it for all the upcoming needs in the new millennium. The islands had previously only been accessible by ferry, so the Honshu Shikoku Bridge project was designed to give a road connection too. It would become the largest and most expensive construction project in Japanese history and involved building 3 expressways across a network of 18 bridges, also designed to accommodate pedestrians and cyclists as well as trains, with the ability to upgrade the lines for bullet trains in the future if needed. Most of the structures are suspension bridges and were completed between 1998 and 1999. At the time, the project cost $48 billion, which adjusted for inflation is the equivalent to $75 billion today. And based on studies conducted once the bridges were complete, the project has been a resounding success for the national economy, as well as making the everyday lives much easier for the people who live on the islands. Number 14. California HighSpeed Rail Network, $77 billion. As the most expensive single construction project in American history and currently the most controversial one ever undertaken, the California High-Speed Rail Network is a planned high-speed rail system that will connect Anaheim and the Union Station in downtown LA with the Salesforce Transit Center in San Francisco. Journey times across this 380-mile distance are expected to be around 2 hours and 40 minutes, which will be a significant reduction to what's possible now. Californian residents, however, have been in a state of limbo ever since the project was first announced and authorized in 2008 when they voted for it. But despite billions of dollars having been pumped into the project already, there's still no sign of it being completed anytime soon. In fact, the original budget of around $30 billion has since ballooned to at least $77 billion, and the completion date has been repeatedly delayed. So it's currently running around 13 years late, with the first trains now expected to run at some point during 2033, by which point the costs are expected to have increased even more. While the ongoing delays and costs have been infuriating to residents and officials alike, the California High-Speed Railway Network acts as a reminder of how complicated mega projects can be, and that they require a great deal of commitment and resolve to get them off the ground. Hopefully, once it's completed, everyone will see it as worth it, and transport throughout California will be revolutionized. Number 13. Al Maktoum International Airport, United Arab Emirates, $82 billion. Leveraging its vast wealth that comes from its oil supplies, the United Arab Emirates is positioning itself as a Middle Eastern hub for business, tourism, and travel, and has spent huge sums in recent decades to develop cities like Dubai to support this. The largest mega project being undertaken in the country, though, is the development of Dubai South, and the main feature of this part of the city is the Al Maktoum International Airport. The airport itself already opened in 2010, but this was just the first stage of its development, and it's far from finished. The current estimate for the completion of the project is 2027, and by that time it's expected to become the largest airport in the world in terms of freight, and one of the busiest for passengers too. Covering an area of 35,000 acres, the airport is expected to be able to handle 13 million tons of freight per year and as many as 260 million passengers in the same time frame. Although they'll have to significantly increase the presence of international airlines to be able to get anywhere close to this, with most industry analysts believing a figure of 5 million annual passengers is far more likely at the beginning. Designed with 5 parallel runways, which means 4 planes will be able to land at the same time, there will be 3 passenger terminals, as well as a number of cargo terminals and private terminals for wealthy passengers. Connected to the wider region by a high-speed rail network, the project is expected to cost around $82 billion by the time it's finished. Number 12. The Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor Project, India, $100 billion. One of the problems that governments face when deciding on investing in initiatives is ensuring that the economic benefits are spread out amongst the regions of the country. This is normally virtually impossible to do and generates a level of resentment by those that are left out. But the latest mega-project in India at least goes some way to address the issue. The Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor project is a plan that will create a high-tech industrial zone that connects the country's two major cities, and in the process will cross 6 Indian states. The almost 1,000-mile-long corridor will feature 24 different investment regions, see the creation of 8 new industrial cities and 2 new airports, and is planned to be completed in 4 stages. The first, which is a dedicated freight corridor, is almost complete, and it's hoped that the entire project will be finished by 2040. With investment coming from both the Indian and Japanese governments, the corridor project is expected to cost around $100 billion. But the extra investment it'll bring to the area, as well as the fact that by the time it's finished, 12% of Indian residents will live in urbanized areas, means that the country truly is preparing itself to continue expanding the economy into the second half of this century. Number 11. Forest City, Malaysia, $100 billion. The idea of Malaysia's Forest City was first announced in 2006 as a collaboration between the Malaysia and Chinese governments. And if all goes to plan, it's hoped that it'll be complete by 2035. Built near Singapore to take advantage of strong connections with the city-state, the Forest City will be made up of 4 artificial islands that cover an area of around 6.5 square miles. The basic idea of it is to bring residential and commercial buildings together in a way that's respectful to nature, so each building is designed to be covered in living gardens and greenery to almost give the impression that it's a natural environment. With a planned cost of around $100 billion, progress has been slow, mainly due to the fact that the chosen location was a former mangrove swamp. It's proved far more difficult to create stable islands to construct buildings on. And while these problems appear to have been overcome, it's set things back quite significantly. As things stand, 15,000 residential units have already been bought, with some of them that are already being used, which is far less than the 700,000 that authorities had hoped would have been sold by now. Still, they've got a long way to go until it's complete, and there's very little doubt that such a unique place will garner attention from all around the world by the time it's finished. Number 10. The Great Mosque of Mecca, Saudi Arabia, $100 billion. The Great Mosque of Mecca in Saudi Arabia is the most sacred site in Islam and the largest mosque in the world, and it's been continuously built and expanded on for more than 1,000 years. It's been in recent times, though, that significant additions have been made, mainly to help accommodate the millions of people who visit the site each year as a part of their beliefs. The Saudi government has undertaken 3 distinct periods of expansion, the first between 1955 and 1973, when 4 minarets were added, and the ceiling and floors were refurbished. The second period, which saw more minarets, an outdoor praying area, more than 500 marble columns, and modern technologies like air conditioning and escalators. And the third, which has more than doubled the site's size in recent years, and it means it now can accommodate 2.5 million people at the same time. In all, it's thought the equivalent of $100 billion has been spent to make the mosque what it is today. And not only is it the 8th largest building in the world, but it's undoubtedly one of the most spectacular of all. Number 9. HS2 United Kingdom, $128 billion. Countries around the world are realizing how important it is to install high-speed rail networks, and currently the most expensive individual mega-project being undertaken in Europe is Britain's HS2. There's been a long concern in the country about the imbalance of investment that goes towards London and the surrounding regions in the south, compared to the cities and regions in the north. The HS2 is supposedly a project that will help to address that. The first stage is a high-speed rail network link between London and Birmingham, which is expected to be completed by 2031, and the second phase will see the line being extended to Manchester and Leeds by 2040. The problem with HS2, however, and the reason why very few British people have anything good to say about it, is the continually escalating costs and delays associated with the project. What should have been near completion already is still more than a decade away, and it's more than tripled in price to around $128 billion. Add to this the destruction of pristine countryside and compulsory purchase of countless homes along the route, and you'll begin to understand why there are still major questions about the viability of the project, and whether the money would simply be better spent as an investment directly into the cities that it's supposedly trying to help. We are constantly adding more people to the Top 5's production team to bring you all the best content. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on and hit the like button. Number 8. Silk City, Kuwait, $132 billion. When it's complete, Silk City in Kuwait will become one of the most stunning places on Earth, and the plan is for it to supercharge the country's economy and world standing for generations to come. It's a project that's been split into 4 stages, with the first currently underway to build a huge port along the coastline. The future stages will include the construction of the financial village, the leisure village, the cultural village, and the ecological village, all of which are planned to be completed by 2044. Of course, with a huge project like this, designers always like to include a world-beating element. And in the case of Silk City, it's the Burj Mubarak Al Kabir, which will become the tallest skyscraper in the world at a height of 3,284 feet, or 1,001 meters, in honor of a collection of Arabian folk tales called 1,001 Arabian Nights. With vast hotel complexes, nature reserves, a new airport, and virtually anything else you'd want from a city, it's perhaps no surprise that this project is expected to cost a whopping $132 billion. But the Kuwaiti authorities, along with the Chinese government, who are also investing in it, are convinced that there'll be a return on this investment in very little time. Number 7. The International Space Station, $165 billion. After humans first traveled into space in the 1960s and set foot on the moon at the end of that decade, there's been the desire to build permanent outposts that people can live in beyond our planet's atmosphere. While we aren't quite at a stage where we can visit a moon base, the International Space Station has been operational for more than 2 decades, and it's not only been a remarkable feat of engineering and ingenuity, but a collaboration between nations around the world. It was built in stages by NASA, Roscosmos, Japan's JAXA, the European Space Agency, and Canada's Space Agency, and provides an incredible platform for scientific research of all kinds, as well as the ability to explore further into the darkest reaches of space than has ever been possible before. Amazingly, it's probably the most expensive single object ever created by mankind, with an estimated cost of $165 billion at today's exchanges. But if there was ever an endeavor that we should collectively work towards, then it's something like this. Hopefully, the collaboration of the ISS will lead to future projects like a base on the Moon or Mars, and one day we won't have to be reliant on just one planet for our continued survival. Number 6. NEOM, Saudi Arabia, $230 billion. NEOM is a word that means new future, is a new city that's being built on the coast of the Red Sea in the northwestern Saudi Arabian province of Tabuk. It's being specifically developed to become a tourist hub, but also as one of the most futuristic cities in the world that incorporates smart technologies in its entire design. Covering a planned area of 10,200 square miles, it's expected to cost somewhere in the regions of $230 to $500 billion, and the Saudi government has already put the full amount in an investment company to cover everything that's needed to see it through to completion. With the region planned to be filled with numerous towns, cities, ports, and zones for industrial development, it's hoped that NEOM will be finished by 2030, with the first stage completed by 2025. The world's largest green hydrogen plant has already begun construction there too, and because of its location and the transport networks that are being set up, it's said that 40% of the world's population will actually be able to travel to NEOM within just 4 hours. This will surely put it in a great position to cater to tourists as well as being a networking space for multinational companies. Number 5. The Gulf Railway, $250 billion. The Gulf Railway is a project that's currently underway in Eastern Arabia that, once it's complete, will connect all of the 6 Gulf Corporation Council members of Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Oman, Qatar, Kuwait, and Bahrain. Planned to be completed by 2025, the finished network will cover a distance of 1,352 miles or 2,100 kilometers and grant unparalleled access across the region. First announced in 2009, each country is responsible for the construction of the rail lines in their own territory, with Saudi Arabia and the UAE responsible for by far the longest stretches of all. Beginning in Kuwait City, the route will pass through Dammam and the Al Batha port in Saudi Arabia, before heading to Abu Dhabi and Al Ain in the UAE, and Sahar and Muscat in Oman. From there, the line will be split, with one section linking to Bahrain and the other to Qatar. The trains traveling the lines will be diesel-powered, and the entire project is expected to cost around $250 billion. This huge price has proved to be tricky during construction because of the fluctuation of oil prices that each of the countries are relying on to pay for the work. But despite being delayed by a few years, the first section is still expected to be in operation by 2023. Not only will the railway provide new opportunities for freight and passenger transport, but it's also expected to create as many as 80,000 permanent jobs to service the stations and infrastructure along the route. Number 4. The Urban Renewal Project, Turkey, $400 billion. There are a number of cities around the world that have been in existence for hundreds and even thousands of years, and this is beginning to create a real problem for the planners and for the residents who live there. The buildings and infrastructure are incompatible with the needs of the modern era, so vast urban renewal projects are needed to prepare them for the future. The largest currently underway is in Turkey, where not only are the buildings aging, but there is increasing safety risks because of natural disasters like earthquakes. The Turkish government has therefore set aside $400 billion to deal with 7.5 million buildings that they've deemed to be unsafe. And the main method of renewal is to simply demolish them and start all over again. With regular collapses that cost lives, this project is already underway at an unbelievable pace. As many as 500,000 structures are being rebuilt every year, with a 5-year time frame having been set for the most urgent 1.5 million. Making these buildings earthquake-proof and modern is one of the largest infrastructure megaprojects ever undertaken anywhere in the world. And at the same time, there's a drive to make the new structures as environmentally conscious as possible, with all municipalities expected to have become zero waste by 2022. If the project proves to be successful and renews the Turkish economy in the way that experts predict, it could form a blueprint for similar schemes to take place elsewhere in the world in the coming years. Number 3. The Interstate Highway System, United States, $549 billion. The Interstate Highway System in the United States is the largest and most complex system of freeways in the world. Construction on the network first began in 1959, following the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956, and the routes link the entire contiguous United States, as well as providing reliable access across Alaska, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico. By 1992, the original plans for the system were declared complete, but several expansions have already been built, and there's currently another 7 routes that are in the planning stages. If you classify the entire interstate highway system as one large transportation mega project, then it's easily the most expensive one ever built on Earth, with an estimated cost of $549 billion in today's prices when you account for inflation. Covering a distance of 46,876 miles, or about 75,000 kilometers, it's also considered one of the most economically beneficial projects ever. It's one of the reasons why America's economy has been able to expand so much in the past 7 decades. Number 2. The TransEuropean Transport Network, $550 billion. The European Union is made up of 27 individual countries that have aligned on their political and economic policy to create one of the largest markets in the world. In theory, this allows them to compete as a bloc with the planet's biggest economies, such as the United States and China, and authorities are investing in huge sums to ensure the transport network across Europe is fit for purpose. This led to the creation of the TransEuropean Transport Network, a huge infrastructure megaproject that's expected to have cost around $550 billion by the time it's finished. This project involves the coordination of governments in each country to improve the roads, railways, waterways, airports, and seaports to create a seamless travel experience no matter where a passenger or freight container needs to go. The transport network was first agreed upon in 1996 and is arranged around 10 core networks that connect to one another. There is, for an example, the North Sea-Baltic Corridor, which links Helsinki in Finland to Antwerp in Belgium across an almost 2,000-mile or 3,200-kilometer route, and the Scandinavian-Mediterranean Corridor, which covers a distance of about 3,000 miles or 4,800 kilometers between Helsinki and Valletta in Malta. A number of the routes have already been completed, but construction is still ongoing and planned to be finished within a decade. By that time, you'll be able to travel from one side of Europe to the other without any complicated changeovers, and it'll be the next step in creating a truly connected and integrated continent. Number 1. The Belt and Road Initiative, $8 trillion. The Silk Road was once the most valuable trade network in the world, and while it's since fallen by the wayside with the development of new transport technologies, China is leading the way in the development of a new Silk Road, something it calls the Belt and Road Initiative. This is, quite simply, the largest and most expensive megaproject ever undertaken, with an estimated overall cost of $8 trillion. Expected to be finished by 2050, it includes more than 7,000 different infrastructure projects across 64 countries throughout Asia, Africa, and Europe. The project was first announced in 2013 and has been a centerpiece of the Chinese Communist Party's foreign policy ever since. Not only seen as a way to establish China's dominance in worldwide trade for a long time to come, the Belt and Road Initiative also has political goals, with many countries relying on huge investment from China to develop their parts of the network. Projects currently underway include the construction of ports, skyscrapers, railways, roads, airports, dams, and technology institutes to design more efficient processes to further enhance trade. And if the plans come through as expected, it could well change the face of world trade as we know it. Watch our future playlist for more top 15 videos about the future. Sit back, relax, and binge watch all of our best future-related videos.